All right, I have a special guest here with me today that I'm excited about. This is Deeann Hansen, and she is one of my favorite people because when I was mentoring her as a new agent, she actually called me out on stuff. So I was talking and I share stories, and one of the stories that I've shared for years is my health journey. And I would say, I want to be 185 pounds of physical perfection, and then, people laugh, whatever. And she comes out afterwards, she said, "Are you serious about this?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, sure." And, I'm sure I was more polished than that. But Deann says, my husband and I go to this gym and we can get you a pass and you can get started. And I took her up on it. And I actually got do you remember all this?
Oh, I remember all this. And actually, before I got you the pass, I remember exactly. I came up to you and said, "You're going to be my real estate mentor, and I'll be your fitness mentor." And so I started you off, before I got you the pass, I started you off with workouts to do in your office. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
To get up out of your chair every hour and
I do remember that now.
10 push-ups and 10 dips and 10 squats, just every hour. Just start with that.
Yeah, I do remember that. And so it's kind of fun when somebody calls me out and challenges me right back. And that was memorable to me. And I actually did do the gym membership, and I went there and I tried.
Yes.
And what I learned about myself at the gym is, number one, we've all seen the YouTube videos making fun of people at the gym. I'm one of those people that if you had your camera on, I would be the one they made fun of. And I know most gym goers say, no, they don't. Everybody cheers you on and supports you. And yet we've seen the videos, right?
Right.
And I think that's unfortunate. I really do think it's unfortunate that there's
is.
people that go to the gym to mock other people for their own fame. But for me, I learned that I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to string together good workouts. And there's lots of people willing to help, that it doesn't faze them. It's been a part of your life for so long. You're like, oh yeah, just go, and lots of people help you. And eventually I did find my way, and it was with the home gym.
Yes.
With that tonal system.
I'm going to call you out again in a minute, but go ahead.
Okay. So it's with that tonal system, and there's coaches and trainers on there that can guide me through those workouts, and that's been something. But I always remember, going back to the start, that you were the one that called me out and said, well, let's get you started.
Yeah.
With it.
And I didn't mean to call you out. It's just that you were helping me so much.
It wasn't even in a
This
call
was
out
something
way.
I knew that I could help you with.
Yeah, it wasn't even in a call out way. It was, hey, you've mentioned this a few times. I'm going to step up and help you.
Right.
And I like that. And I think as we transition from this uncomfortable topic about my physique to real estate, which I'm more comfortable in, but I think that's a part of your personality that's come out in your business and says, you see somebody that needs something and you say, I can help with that. And there have been really challenging deals. Like your first year, you were bringing stuff to me like, oh, geez, this is complicated stuff.
There were things we had to go to the lawyer at the board and ask about.
Yeah. And yet you were undaunted. You were like, somebody needs help. We're going to figure out a way to make this happen, and I can be the one to do that. And I've loved that attitude of yours that causes you to just jump in and help people when you see that they need help. But tell me how long have you been in real estate? What caused you to get into this business?
Yeah, so when I was 19, I actually started working for a contractor and developer. So just not out of high school very long. I had been doing a lot of jobs that involved dance, and so I was ready to try something new. And there was this opportunity to work for a developer. His name's Doug Allen, and I worked for him for initially, I think it was until I became a mom, so about 9 years I worked for him, and I learned so much about real estate. Actually, just being the office manager, being hands-on. I rode a skid steer once. I did, and and Doug really taught me to think outside of the box. That a lot of things are not going to be easy, and so the development process is super complicated, and you're going to have to find ways to get through it and find the right people to help you do that. So I learned that very young, and then I became a mom. My whole plan was always to be a stay-at-home mom, but I always had this drive to use my business senses to do something more. So I did, for a while, I did some accounting at home, and that was okay for a while, but I really genuinely wanted to work with people and help people. And I did. I thought about being a personal trainer for a little while, and I thought, oh, it's not really the scene that I feel comfortable in all the time. I don't really want to do that. but I do know something about real estate. So I looked into it a little bit, and I thought, man, I think this is something that I could be really good at. And so the plan actually was not to get started until I knew I was going to have one more kid. And so the idea was not to get started until that child was in like kindergarten or first grade. But I had a little bit of downtime in between baby number 2 and number 3 when they were in preschool and all that. So I thought, well, I'll just do the schooling and then I'll be ready to go when they're in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Well, the schooling went pretty quickly for me. And then I was able to actually go back to Doug, asking just a development question for a potential client I had, and business took off from there just by working that sphere of influence.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that's how you got started.
Yes, exactly.
Now, the brokerage you choose, I've taught agents for years that it's about you and not so much the brokerage. But the brokerage can make a big difference. My first company
Definitely.
was a 60-40 split, meaning they took 40% of my commissions at the end, and which might be okay depending on what I got in return for it. But in this case, I didn't get anything. They didn't have a training program. They didn't have any support, 2 or 3 days to hear back from the broker if I had questions. What was it that caused you to pick equity? And you've been with me ever since.
From the beginning. Yeah. And I went and sat down and interviewed with probably 5 brokerages, and they were selling me pretty hard. You did not sell me very hard. No. You told me all the benefits, but I mean, there were just the way it came across some ways, and the promises that people were making to me, what they were going to do for me as a brokerage. They weren't telling me, I had just finished schooling, but they didn't tell me how they were going to help me sell a house, learn how to do that. They just told me, I couldn't get specifics out of them. They've got the training. They're going to get me to that $1 million sale point in the first year. And they've got the scripts. That was one thing I hated. I did not want scripts.
Yeah.
And then I went and visited some of their trainings. I didn't like the way that they pushed things. And I said, this is not for me personally. My whole plan was, I have young kids at home. I'm still planning on having one more. I need to do it with a brokerage that fits me and my lifestyle and will let me be the person to build my business. But I need the training. And so equity has great fees, and it was a turnoff to go to some of these brokerages and have them say, okay, we're going to start with a 50-50 split. And some of them, 60-40 split. And I just thought, wow, that sounds rough. And
That's
I
a
had
gut check.
It is. And I had talked to some agents who had told me, you pour your heart and soul into some transactions, and to see 50% of your commission leave is heart-wrenching. So I didn't like that. And the things that they offered in return, for me, they didn't give me value. So sitting down, I went to some trainings and I watched them tell these new agents, yes, the whole concept of contacting 10 people a day to tell them you're an agent, ask them who they know who's looking into buying or selling. That's a great concept. I had babies at home, and that was a scary thing for me to jump in and say, I'm absolutely going to do that. I was not going to do the scripts. I would never do that. I have enough confidence in myself to be able to talk to someone without a script.
Yeah.
So that was a turnoff. And I went and sat down with you at the end of the day. And I remember it was the end of the day because you were exhausted. But you were so genuine. And your discussion with me just made me feel good. And then you gave me specifics. And one of the biggest positives for me was you gave me your training channel, the Elite Agent Training. And so I went home and I watched your training videos, and I thought, this is a guy who knows what he's talking about. And you had made it very clear to me that my business was going to be about me, which in some regards scared me a little bit. And the fact that the fees for equity were so small, I was a little scared of that too, because I thought, I need help. And then you explained to me your mentoring program and how that worked. And the fee structure is a little bit different for those first 3 transactions, which I felt great about.
Yeah.
And then after the mentoring, you told me, I'm always going to be your broker. I'm always going to be here for you. And I knew that was true. And it has been true for the past 6.5 years that I've been doing this. So for me, even though it wasn't so much that I had these salesmen presenting to me how they were going to make me the best, it was that I had this guy in front of me who was tired, probably just wanted to go home and had a long day, but he made me feel like I could be my best if I followed the training and I went through the program, and it's been true. So So I recommend you everywhere I go.
Well, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And just to be fair, it could have been 9:30 in the morning, and I probably still would have looked tired.
Yeah. Well,
That's just my life.
It was
Yeah.
fantastic. I
Well,
love it.
thank
You were like rubbing your eyes like a little kid, and I was like, oh,
Aw.
he's adorable. I'm gonna go with him.
Well, I'm glad you've been with me because I've actually learned by watching you as well.
Oh, thank you.
You've just done a phenomenal job as an agent. Like I said, your fearlessness to be able to go in to help
Right.
people and take on some of the projects that you've taken on, because they've been some hard ones.
Absolutely.
What is it about you that causes because again, you've got, being a mom and a wife, and there's a lot of things on your plate
Right.
that you're in charge of. I don't imagine you spend a lot of time cold calling.
I spend no time cold calling.
That's what I thought.
Mhm.
Didn't want to put words in your
Yeah.
mouth, but yet you consistently get repeat business. What
Right.
is it that causes you to stand out with your clients, with your sphere of influence, that causes them to trust you and want to send people back to you?
Right. So my clients know that I care about them 100%. And it started with, farming that sphere of influence kind of thing. Some of my biggest projects have been with Doug, who I learned work ethic and a lot of things with. And starting off with friends and family and having my name recommended, I have always proven myself to my clients. Every time I sit down at an appointment, I make sure that they know that I understand how personal this process is to them. I understand how emotional it is to them and how it's going to be. I understand how stressful it has the potential to be. I make sure they know that I've done this several times. So I am going to take the stress off you. We're going to make this as simple and easy as possible. And as the process goes along, opportunities come up for me to prove to them that I am emotionally connected to them. I know I hear a lot of real estate agents say you can't be emotional about real estate. And I guess that's true in the fact that when something goes wrong, you can't fly off the handle. You can't just combat your way through it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You're not going to get anywhere just by butting heads. But for me, real estate is an emotional thing because I get very emotionally invested in my clients, and they know that. Up until this point, I haven't done any marketing outside of my clients. All of my marketing expenses I put into my clients. So, for example, and this may not be a real popular thing among agents, but back when we were seeing houses along with 25 other showings in one day,
Yeah.
I would often reduce my commission in an offer, not to be competitive with other agents, but because this was the house for that client. It meant a lot to them. In a lot of cases, I had their house under contract and I needed to find replacement property. So to me, it made more sense to give up some money to make the whole thing work and to make sure my clients knew how important this was to them. And doing that, giving up a little money here on one client has given me 2 more clients somewhere else. I mentioned to you before, like I had a client who worked with a builder during that time when builders had to come back and ask for a little bit more money. And it wasn't fun for anyone. It wasn't fun for the builder. It wasn't fun for the buyers. It wasn't fun for us as agents.
Week before closing, you get this bomb dropped in your lap that we're up $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 in price, and take it or walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. And in some cases, I was able to work with lenders to try to ease things up a little bit on those clients. And if the price went up, I was going to get commission on that price. Well, I didn't think that was fair. And I don't know if my clients even thought about it, but I told them, okay, one thing I'm going to do personally to help you is to take the money I was going to get on a commission for that, and we're going to put that towards your closing costs, because that seems fair to me.
Yeah.
And that went a long way with those clients, and I've gotten business from their family. So all of my marketing expenses go into my clients, and that's what brings back repeat business for me.
It's interesting that you mentioned that now. Just a couple days, no, yesterday, Tuesday, we had a trainer come into our office talking about marketing, and that 75% of people's business comes from their sphere of influence. And I said, I think that's skewed a little bit because there are very few people out there that are the smile and dial guys. You know, they've got the auto dialers. They're calling 400 people a day. They don't put any effort into their sphere of influence, their past clients, anything like that. And those skew the numbers. I said for the average agent, I think we're probably closer to 90 or 95% of business comes from your sphere of influence. And yet and he asked the question in the marketing class, how much of your marketing budget goes towards this group of people, or does it goes towards people that you don't know yet, you know, that you're trying to find? And by and large, it's, 95% of the budget of any marketing goes towards trying to find new people, but all of your business is coming from the people that already know you.
Right.
And I love that you have found out early on that if you're putting your marketing budget into the people that know you, that's where the largest benefit comes from.
Absolutely.
So, and I love your stories. You didn't finish the one about the builder, but it was nearly $20,000 in commission that you were.
That was a different story.
Oh, is that a different one?
Yes. So that was
share with me the details on
so
that one.
Yeah,
again.
the one where that was probably $1,500 worth of commissions that were extra. No, I had a client once who we looked and looked and looked for houses, and we made a couple offers, and it was a lot of time that we put into this, and they were doing a reverse mortgage, which wasn't something I had a lot of experience with.
Okay.
So my lender, who I work with a couple lenders, I suggest those, but the lender that they had spoken to didn't do reverse mortgages. So they on their own went and found someone who was the vice president of a credit union who they felt comfortable going with. I know, and you're smiling because you told me.
I remember.
Yeah, credit.
I remember the phone call.
That's scary. Yeah. So we got there. We finally found the house for them. We made the contract subject to the sale of their property. Well, that was during the time where we had 25 showings a day, and I had another listing that weekend, and I couldn't believe how many people I got through that house and the offers we got in. Well, their house had 2 showings the entire weekend, but we did get 1 offer, and we needed to get it under contract. That couple did not want to sign a subject to finding replacement property. Okay. My clients were okay with that because they had their contract. They were good to go. So my concern was I spoke with the lender many, many times and said, okay, these are our figures. Are we good to go? If we sell for this price, here are the commissions. Can we purchase for this price? Yes, we're good. We have everything good? Yes, we're good. I literally called her 3 times to make sure because I was scared.
And
she said, we're good to go. This is the VP of the credit union.
Yeah.
And she said, we're good. I said, actually, we ended up putting it under contract for $10,000 more than we had it listed for. She said, oh, great. They're going to get $10,000 back. I found out 3 days later, after all the contracts were signed, that she had not updated the date in the application. And somehow, and I never sell myself as a lending expert because I'm not. We always go to the lending experts. But somehow, changing the date of the application made it so instead of getting $10,000 back, they were going to have to bring $20,000 to the table. This is an old retired couple on a very fixed income. They had been living on a reverse mortgage. They did not have $20,000. We had their house under contract, and we had moved along far enough that if they canceled the contract, they were going to have to pay not only the earnest money back for their buyers, but double that.
Yeah.
So it would have been $10,000. So
and possible penalties for the sell of their home that
well,
otherwise
that's what
they're
I mean.
homeless.
The sell, yeah. And so they couldn't cancel the sale for their buyers, or else they would have had to pay them $10,000. And they weren't going to get the house that they needed to be in. They were in a split level house that had 4 sets of stairs, and they couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. And I loved them. I fell in love with these clients. I always do. And so to have them have found the perfect house, near family, single level living, and then they had their house that they already owned under contract. Everything was set up, but they were going to lose everything. It was all going to fall apart because they didn't have $20,000. So I tried going back to the buyer's agent and asking, can they just come up $5,000, just $5,000? I asked going back to the seller's agent for the home they were going to purchase, can they come down $5,000? Can we do any of that? Nobody could budge. Nobody would budge at all. I asked the lender they'd talk to, okay, how much money are you making off this? Because this is now going to go to my clients. And she agreed. It wasn't going to be very, very much. So between the 2 transactions, I stood to make about $20,000 commission. So I was set and ready and have everything lined up just to have that commission turned over to my clients.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't do that, I wasn't going to get a commission anyway.
Right.
And they were going to have to pay $10,000 and not get in the home they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't I do that?
Right.
You know, I will say, luckily, we were saved by a lender who knew what he was doing. I got a recommendation from the seller's agent who said, go talk to my guy who was an expert on reverse mortgages, and they ended up getting $20,000 back, and I was able to keep my commission.
Good.
So that is my biggest piece of advice for, I know you're going to ask me about this, but new agents and for clients, find people who know what they're doing. So find lenders that you are confident in. Find a broker that you know is knowledgeable. You know, surround yourself with people who know things, because problems are going to come up. People are going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, but other people are going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to be the one that puts the pieces back together.
Yeah. I love your stories because it demonstrates the value of a good real estate agent. Somebody that's getting in there that realizes that problems do come up. This isn't a simple question of how do I fill out some paperwork online.
Right.
You know, I mean, we've got inspections, appraisals, financial issues, all sorts of things. And really it all comes down to the people as well. You know, we've got people's hearts and emotions and their families, and there's so much involved here. And having somebody that cares enough to dig into it and find the solutions that somebody else might not be willing to. And the fact that you're willing to give up potentially $20,000 to take care of somebody just is a huge shout out to the type of person that you are and why people should work with you and quite frankly, realtors that care. And I always recommend to people, you know, I don't know how many normal people listen to this. I think it's mostly for real estate agents, but I always recommend to people, always sit down with, you know, if you're interviewing agents, sit down with somebody and find somebody that clicks with you.
Right.
Somebody that you feel like cares. Because I've seen so many people that are sharp and polished, but it's all about them.
Right.
And it can't be. You know, in this business, it has to be about the person. And I think you've demonstrated that so well. So I was going to ask you, but if that's your answer, you know, what is one thing that you would recommend to a new agent? Is that that's the final answer?
Because you just go through all of this schooling and you get your certificate, you take your test, and you don't have any idea how to be a real estate agent. You know, I mean, you got an idea, I guess, but it's really hard to know what to do, even if you do know all the forms. And so the first step is finding a broker who you feel can train you and can give you education. And that's been such a big advantage to having you. And that was another thing I should have said when I chose to go with you, is knowing that you were the trainer for all of the equity offices in the country was a big deal to me too. And every time I've had a question, you've been able to answer it. There was that one time we had a very unique situation that we had to go to legal, which is great to have that resource.
I'm not ashamed about that.
Not at all.
I admitted that we had our mandatory residential course that's required by state law now. And I just went to that last week, and I admitted there in the class, I'm like, I probably call Craig every other month with a question.
That's a sign of a good broker. You don't want someone who thinks they know all the answers all the time, because they're going to get into a unique situation, and having that kind of arrogancy is going to get them in trouble.
Yeah. So. It's amazing the types of challenges that we run into, and it blows my mind that there are groups out there, and I think there's a lot of big money behind it, that are trying to say, oh, you don't need a real estate agent, when I'm running into challenges after, you know, I mean, I deal with nearly 1,000 transactions a month.
Wow. And
probably every other month I'm running into something I've never seen before. And even just today, I'm texting another broker just as a sounding board. He's one of the commissioners for the state. And I texted him and said, hey, how does this sound to you? Does this sound right? And he's like, yeah, I can't think of anything in the law. I'm like, okay, good. Because, you know, you find yourself second guessing things. And so it's so good to surround yourself with good people. It makes a difference.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are with everything going on, but I've been so proud to watch you grow and the amazing agent that you are. I'm proud to have you affiliated with us.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you
Deann.
so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. We hope you found the discussion valuable. Remember, if you're looking to take your own real estate career to the next level, be sure to visit eliteagenttraining.com for our exclusive training program. It doesn't matter if you're a brand new agent or a veteran in the industry. If you're looking to increase your business, this program will get you there. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more valuable insights and tips. Until next time.